Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Grid Live Encore. I'm Ben Schneider alongside our usual co-host, Brandon Crossland. Welcome back, Brandon, after a week off. Josh Burch is here as well with Kobe Lambeth and Matthew Bro making his Encore debut. Matthew, how's it going, my friend?
I'm hanging in there, living every day, once at a time, I guess. So every day at a time. But yeah, how are you doing, Ben?
Doing all right. We've got a lot to recap from Phoenix, obviously. Brandon, Kobe, and you, Matthew, will be with us in a little bit to recap that. But I want to start with Josh, since I know we had a little bit of confusion with the time change and daylight savings, everything. It is still midnight over there for you, I believe. So we want to let you go into your Moto2 and Moto3 recap here and just take it away.
Yeah, thanks for that as well. Yeah, daylight saving times. I feel like I'm the three witches in Hocus Pocus as well, being tricked by the flashing lights. Keeps on happening, but still, we're all on the same time now, back to normal. Okay, so it was the final weekend of MotoGP as well, which meant it was the final weekend for Moto3 and for Moto2. Now, we'll start off with Moto3 as well. Now, their championship was already decided some weeks back as well. Izan Guevara had already taken the World Championship away from Sergio Garcia. Garcia had a poor second half of the season, so it was looking unlikely. Now, Garcia and Guevara riding with the Gas bike as well, both being promoted up the championship next year. So both wanted something to prove leaving Moto3. Now, Gas have already secured the Riders' Championship and now first place in the championship. Garcia has secured second. He only had to finish 5 points ahead of Dennis Foggia. He did that. Foggia didn't have a great race, started well, but dropped back quite a lot and got involved in a midfield scrum as well. So Garcia ended the race on the podium in third place. Great news for the Gas bikes. Now, the real interesting point in this race for Moto3 was at the front because Izan Guevara checked out, the Moto3 world champion, wanted to win his last ever appearance in Moto3, but he was pressured lap after lap after lap by Deniz Öncü as well, the young Turkish rider. Deniz Öncü's never won a Moto3 race before as well. He's been second 4 times. 3 of those times have been this season. Sadly, even though he was pushing like mad and did go for the overtake on the last lap, slipped on the inside line, got the lead, led for 2 corners before Guevara took him back and led across the line to win the race. Deniz Öncü has to wait another year, but Izan Guevara brilliantly winning his final appearance in Moto3 as well, leaving the series as the champion and the last race winner. His teammate Sergio Garcia finishing third in the race, second in the standings. It's been a dream year for Gas completing it both as well, as both will look to go to Moto2 next year. Certain for Garcia, Guevara, Garcia's waiting for contract to be signed to move up as well, but it looks to be a done deal from what everyone's been saying. Further down, John McPhee also, his last ever appearance in Moto3. He's reached the age limit as well. He couldn't get a ride in Moto2. It looks like he's going to sit out next season at least before hopefully getting a seat in 2024, finally, permanently in Moto2. He's been in the Moto3 class since the 125cc days as well. So well over, I think, about... that 1cc changed over in about 2012, so I think he's been in about 13 years. It's really, really long time for John. And he's a race winner as well. And he is a race winner this year after he won in Malaysia 2 weeks ago. We told you about that. So it was really a sad situation in Moto3 where it didn't really give us the race we expected, because usually Moto3 is a very tight, compact race, loads of action. It didn't happen. It was more like a Moto2 race, split up and tailgating together. But Moto2 was more like a Moto3 race. And why? Because they had a world championship to decide as well. 2 of the 3 series went into the final round with titles still on the line. Now, after a crash in Sepang for championship leader Ayagura, it actually meant that he'd lost the 19-point lead he gained over Augusto Fernandez in the championship. They went in with about a 14.5 points difference between them in favor of Fernandez. So, realistically, Ayagura had to win the race with Fernandez being 7th or lower. Fernandez had a great qualifying and a great Grand Prix. He was right up there, challenging for 4th and 5th throughout the race as well, and eventually settled into 4th position. Ayagura was running in 2nd position as well, and at one point in the Grand Prix, had the championship, until coming out of turn number 7, a very fast right-hand corner, the front buckled away from him. Down he went through the gravel, the bike barreling over as well, creating a completely smashed up motorcycle as well. Luckily, he's okay, but the title hope's gone in an instant. So the Moto2 world champion of 2022 is Augusto Fernandez. But how much did he want to go for the race win to clinch the championship? Well, quite far. He was battling with Tony Alberino, who started third on the grid, had a great launch and took the lead and stayed there until around about the halfway point, until his front tyre started to degrade. He dropped back behind Pedro Acosta, who is the Red Bull KTO Ijo teammate to the world champion Augusto Fernandez. So Acosta took the lead. Then, with a few laps to go, Fernandez took second. And then we were thinking, okay, is it going to be team orders to let Fernandez take the win and the championship, or the Red Bull KTM Ijo team going to have a double celebration? To everybody's delight, it was a double celebration. Pedro Acosta taking his second win of the season as well, and getting a race win for the Red Bull KTM Ijo that helped them in the Constructors' Championship, and Augusto Fernandez finishing in second, getting the world title for Moto2. Everybody delighted, everybody very, very happy. So that rounded out Moto3 and Moto2 seasons as well. But because I was on the wrap-up show yesterday, we've got a little bit of extra time. I just want to say what a race from Pepo Bagnaia as well. Side-by-side battle with Fabio Quartararo, a perfect way to end the season. On a track that doesn't offer us a lot of exciting racing, MotoGP was clearly the star yesterday with a gripping title battle, and Bagnaia becoming the first world champion on Ducati since Casey Stone in 2007 was well worth the break. Congratulations to him. 96 points down at the midpoint of the season to what ending up 17 points ahead at the end. It's the greatest comeback I've ever seen in motorsports. Absolutely fantastic. And if you want more MotoGP action, tomorrow there's the post-season test where everyone gets to try out their new bikes as well. It's live all day as well. We will be covering ourselves on my YouTube channel the last hour of the morning session and the afternoon session, because otherwise there's 3 hours to talk about, and no one is well enough in this house to talk for 3 hours straight. But that's a little bit of what's happened then in Valencia. And to be honest, Ben, I am going to miss Moto3 and Moto2 because they've been some cracking racing this year, but I can't wait for next year when we can get it on the YouTube channel. Now we've got permission, get it all done and get it done and get people into this incredible junior series that provide us with so much talent as well, that they're credited as world championships themselves. That's why Marc Marquez is an 8-time champion and a 6-time Premier Class champion. It's a great, great series, and this year's been no exception. It's been amazing.
Well, I want to catch up on the chat room here. I want to say hi to our friend of the show, Seth Eves. Busy night checking you guys out while listening to the Tennessee men's basketball opener and also getting ready for Ravens Saints on USRN. So stay tuned for that, everybody. Just want to say hi to A Day in the Life as well, one of our usual viewers in the chat room. And he actually has a question on the note regarding next year. Of course, we've been talking about the sprint races for MotoGP. Will Moto2 and Moto3 do sprint races next year? Josh, you want to answer that?
Yeah, now it's very interesting. At the moment, no. So Moto2 and Moto3 are not having sprint races. They're keeping the traditional Saturday qualifyings as well, but their format has changed. They're only going to have 2 practice sessions on a Friday, then straight into qualifying on the Saturday, and on Sunday they don't get a warm-up either. So their 10-minute warm-up sessions are gone for both Moto3 and Moto2 in order to try and fit in a couple extra Moto E races as well in the season, as Moto E next year gets promoted from being a World Cup into an official World Championship as well. So in order to tweak everything around and get everything set up so it's got 4 series plus a sprint race for MotoGP, the format has changed. But no, Moto2 and Moto3, at least for now, don't have sprint races next year.
I want to say hi to Demas as well. Fast AF for Augusto Fernandez. I guess a nice play on his initials there.
Yeah, I was shocked when that came up on the commentary monitor as well. Hashtag Fast AF as well. I thought that's quite clever, actually. I wish I'd have thought of that and had it in the title. But Fernandez is absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to see what he does in the Premier Class soon.
Well, Josh, on that note, we want to thank you for the Moto2 and Moto3 coverage here the second half of the season. Maybe we'll get to do it again next year, because I noticed the F2 and F3 schedules are out again. And once again, Formula 2 has that 2.5, almost 3-month gap between their penultimate race in their championship race, or round, I guess I should say, of the season. So we'll see how that works into our schedule next year. But in the meantime, I want to let you go here. What is your one shining moment from this weekend in Moto2, Moto3, or I guess anything you saw in Phoenix as well on the NASCAR side?
Well, let's have a two, shall we? Because it wasn't the wrap up yesterday as well. In terms of for the Encore, so Moto2, Moto3, my one shining moment, I think I'd have to go purely, I think, to Pietro Acosta, because Fernando's getting all the praise there, but Acosta's had such a difficult season. He had an injury as well, got booted out for quite a lot of the season as well, struggled to get back into the rhythm of things after a victory in Mugello. So I think he's just definitely deserving a victory, because he is last year's Moto3 champion. He's a quick rider, and we're going to see him next year right at the top. So he's my one shining moment for that. And in terms of the normality of things as well, I don't want to go MotoGP, so I think I'll have to go for the way NASCAR sort of dealt with the tragic news of what happened, of course, with the Gibbs family, and the support that this motorsports world shows each other when we have tragedy as well. And I think that even though it's a tragic situation, and we were talking yesterday in our own chat, so that we all felt like this was a bit off. Everyone's a bit down, obviously, and we didn't feel like it was right to be racing after what happened. But it's the way that the motorsport community, and especially NASCAR, sort of came together afterwards, and it's the nice presence it's given us as well for comforting as well. And I really hope that it's reached the Gibbs family as well, and they all know that we're all thinking of them, and we hope they come back stronger next year as well, and make him proud as well.
Well, of course, we'll have more on Ty Gibbs and his Xfinity Series championship a little bit later on in the show, but I just want to echo everything you just said, Josh, as well. We're continuing to extend our thoughts, prayers, and condolences to the Gibbs family as they continue to deal with Coy's sudden, unthinkable, unfathomable passing just hours after watching his son Ty win the championship. I guess if there's any silver lining there, we can take comfort in the fact that he spent his final hours watching his son at the highest of highs in his young career. And as critical as we've been of Ty's driving and aggression at sometimes this year, there's no denying his talent. And I've got a feeling we're going to see him in the Cup Series for a long time to come, building out an incredible career for him in the future. So we can at least take some peace in that.
Yeah, I mean, Ty Gibbs has done some very questionable things in a race car this year, but I don't think you'll find anybody that won't say he's not an exciting up-and-coming talent as well, and he provides a bit of cheekiness that the paddock loves as well, and NASCAR as a whole loves, and we love a drama. He gives us it, and he's such a wonderful person as well behind the scenes as well. It's amazing, the brotherhood that NASCAR has. And I think as well, it's tragic as well, what happened to Coy, as you said. And I think there's no... a personal story here. It's reminded me a lot of my great aunt who passed away a couple of years ago. The day after... We were in lockdown. And the day before she passed away very suddenly, because we're in lockdown, it was VE Day as well, the anniversary, 70th anniversary. Her entire family lined up outside her house alongside her husband as well, and were there doing all the celebrations and everything. And it's that sort of nice memory that you have, and not many people get to have a great last day. I know in both cases it's unknown, but it's that silver lining that you sort of do go out on an emotional high, and that's what I like as well. There was no pain, there was no suffering. It's a clean break that is difficult to understand, but it's a lovely memory to have in the long run, that it's after something so positive. It's weird to understand, but it's something that down the line you'll see a lot of people saying, I'm so glad that it wasn't a bad memory, it was a good memory, the last one they had. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's a good last memory as well. And they're not going to realize it now, 24 hours after, but eventually down the line, they will see that that's a great last memory to have together as a family.
Absolutely. Well, Josh, thank you so much. We're going to bring the rest of the Encore team back in here now, and we will see you in a couple of weeks' time to recap the final round of Formula 2 in Abu Dhabi. A lot of eyes are going to be on Logan Sargent, who's provisionally been announced for Williams, but he does still have to maintain enough or a high enough rank in the final standings to get that super license. So we'll be keeping our eyes on that.
Yep, and I can't wait for the final round. And I've never seen Encore so crowded, so I'm going to dip out, let you guys have a great one as well, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks after Abu Dhabi.
Thank you, Josh. In what is likely going to be Kyle Busch Motorsports' final race in ARCA for the foreseeable future, it was Sammy Smith who opened the weekend at Phoenix by taking the West Series win in dominating fashion. Smith started on pole and led the most laps despite being held a lap for an incident with Taylor Gray midway through the race, though many believed this was an unfair penalty as Gray had been blocking a run from Smith down the backstretch before eventually spinning off of Smith's bumper. Regardless, Smith eventually got the free pass and drove back through the field to take the win. In the championship, meanwhile, that was essentially already decided. All Jake Drew had to do was take the green flag and make his championship official. So that gives Bob Bruncotti and Sunrise Ford Racing another championship in the ARCA Menards Series West. Now, moving on to the Truck Series recap, Zane Smith emerged from a three-way battle for the lead, win, and ultimately the championship in the closing laps on Friday night in the Truck Series, beating out defending champion Ben Rhodes and Kyle Busch Motorsports' Chandler Smith. Zane Smith's championship comes after finishing second in the championship four for GMS Racing each of the last 2 years. It's also the first NASCAR championship for Front Row Motorsports, a Cup Series mainstay for nearly the last full 2 decades, getting their first championship in NASCAR. I want to say hi to Casey here before we get into our first question. Good to see you, Casey, and good to see everybody that's rejoined the stream here again. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Still a little flustered trying to get everything back here. But as I mentioned to start the show, we have a couple of guests with us tonight, Kobe and Matt from our other Grid shows, kind enough to join us for championship weekend here. So, Kobe, I'll start with you. How big of a deal is this championship, not just for Zane Smith, but for Bob Jenkins and the entire Front Row Motorsports team?
Oh, Ben, this is a huge deal for Front Row Motorsports. And thinking about looking back at the history of Front Row Motorsports, they started off their time in the NASCAR Cup Series as back markers, just trying to make it by each week and qualify for all of the races. And look at what they've become. I remember when they got their first win at Talladega. That was an epic finish. They're one of the biggest upset underdog stories that we saw at the time with David Reagan, David Gilliland working together in the draft, beating Carl Edwards there at Talladega with David Reagan going to victory lane. That was such an incredible moment. And then Chris Buescher in the fog at Pocono getting that surprise victory. Front Row Motorsports even won the biggest race in NASCAR, the Daytona 500 with Michael McDowell, and now getting a NASCAR championship in the Truck Series. Such an incredible ride it's been for Bob Jenkins. It just goes to show and also give some encouragement to some other race teams who are currently running at the back of the field that the state of course, do whatever you can to survive, especially when tough financial situations arrive, because one day you can be Front Row Motorsports. You can just use that model to excel. Like in 10 years from now, we might be talking about Rick Ware Racing, NASCAR champions, whether it's in Cup, Xfinity, or trucks. Who knows? And I think this should serve as a motivation for some of the smaller teams in the sport.
Yeah, and I think if Rick Ware Racing in our lifetime wins some sort of NASCAR championship, that has to be the shining moment of the century, to be honest with you. But to really answer the question, it's got to be probably the biggest thing to ever happen to Front Row Motorsports. I mean, granted, Michael McDowell did win the Daytona 500 not technically last season, but 2 seasons ago. It's just a tremendous deal. I mean, this is a truck team that is very new to the sport. I believe they've only done 68 races, something like that. Started the team in 2020 with Todd Gillen, ended up taking over when Todd Gillen moved, went to Zane Smith. Zane Smith's got it done. Just plain simple, has got it done, finished second and then finished first. So for a new team like this, for an organization that has been in the sport for quite a long time, I mean, we were all barely even in school, 4 or 5 years old, when Front Row joined NASCAR under a different name back in 2004-2005 season. And now Truck Series, they were here for 2 years, came into COVID with 2020, and now they're NASCAR Truck Series championships within 2 years. So it's a tremendous thing to happen for Bob Jenkins and this Front Row Motorsports team, and especially for Zane Smith too. I mean, he's a guy who has a lot of talent. What we have seen with him coming finish, not knowing last year where he was going to be, what ride he's going to have, and then saying, let me just go win the championship. And he did just that. So it's going to be exciting to see him from a perspective young kid who will be making a Cup Series races next season with it would be Front Row. I'm so sorry. So many Fords. So this is a fun thing we talk about the Truck Series. There's probably going to be one Ford team, maybe. And then we look into the Cup Series, there's like 15 Fords. So you never know what that. But yeah, this is definitely a very tremendous thing for Front Row Motorsports. I'm very happy to see a team like this who has been in the sport for so long finally get what they've been looking for in the Truck Series with a championship.
Yeah, Matthew, I can stand with everything you and Kobe just said there. Front Row Motorsports, that's huge for them to have a championship, be wherever it be. It's in the Truck Series. That's just a big of a accomplishment, being in the top 3 touring series. And I know as much as we pick on leeches here on this show and some of the other shows, I love Cup team involvement in the Xfinity Series and what's going to be now the Craftsman Truck Series. I've liked it in the past. I really just like that familiarity from fans that may just stick with the Cup Series. I think that's a great way for them to branch out into the other 2 series that they may not watch as much, because if you get some familiar tie-ins to them, they might be interested in watching these lower divisions. And I've always been a fan of Cup Series teams that venture back to the Xfinity and Truck Series. And one in particular, like Roush and Xfinity, I would really like to see them make a comeback with the 60 car or something like that. Although it was cursed. People think it was cursed, though. A big championship, though, for Zane Smith and Front Row Motorsports as a whole. And really I just like seeing that 38 on a truck.
Well, you never know with the Keselowski connection now with RFK. Of course, Brad Keselowski used to have his truck team, and you think of all the Cup Series stars that we see now that can trace their roots back. Even Ross Chastain was mentioning Brad, I think, in his post-race interview at Phoenix yesterday. So who knows what the future holds for the Truck Series, and we'll get into that in just a second as well. But I also want to catch up on the chat room. Good to see Casey Campbell in here, and Casey brings up another good point. Bob Riccotti retiring after this season from ownership in the West Series, so a great way for that team to go out. Seth Eves says, good, clean battle at the end. Refreshing considering what we've seen in this series in the past. Zane Smith is so good. He's got a super bright future ahead of him. Couldn't agree more. Great to see KC in the chat. Like I said, I'm just trying to pick out some of his comments here. What are your thoughts on KBM's tenure with Toyota coming to a close? Well, I think we all knew it was coming, obviously, with Kyle Busch switching over to RCR. You had to figure if a truck team would follow and switch to Chevrolet as well. And I'll leave this one open-ended for everybody here. Kobe, I guess we'll start with you. What will you remember about Camping World's tenure sponsoring the Truck Series?
It's just Camping World's commitment to this series and the involvement. They went all in, and they did everything to promote this series. And Marcus Lemonis has been such a great partner for the Truck Series for so many years. Really disappointing to see this partnership end, but going back to an old partner, Craftsman. Really excited. It feels some nostalgia from my childhood growing up. When I first started watching NASCAR, it was a NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. So it's really nice to see that name coming back. And in regards to Camping World's time sponsoring the NASCAR Truck Series, yes, it's sad that it's over, but be glad that it happened. And I think the sport is better off that we had this partnership with Camping World.
Brandon, you were saying when we talked about the Knoxville race and some of the tweets Marcus Lemonis was liking, you were saying that you would love to see a Craftsman reunion. But thinking back to Camping World and Gander and that era of the Truck Series, what will you remember most from Marcus Lemonis' involvement with the sport?
Oh, man, just the amount of passion he put into being the title sponsor of the series. I mean, he really brought the Truck Series to different heights, and just the amount of the lengths he was willing to go to get guys to be in the series and stay in the series. I mean, you look back at one of those races where half the field was Camping World sponsored. It was outrageous. But that just shows the kind of guy that Marcus Lemonis is. And he was very emotional at the very last race at Phoenix. He was saying he was almost in tears or something to that point as he tweeted out his last time at on track as the title sponsor. So yeah, basically Marcus Lemonis is the big key guy there for the Camping World sponsorship through all these years.
Matthew, you mentioned on the wrap-up show yesterday talking about Joey Logano and his championship in what was then the Busch East Series. That's where Marcus got his start with the Camping World brand, really after sponsoring a few teams in 2007. The East and West Series were under the Camping World brand in 2008. What does the Camping World brand mean to you? I know you talk a lot of times about being a young kid getting excited about the sport. I mean, we really don't know a world without Camping World sponsorship in NASCAR.
Yeah, I mean, definitely both what Kobe and Brandon said about his commitment was one of the best things you could see. I think he truly brought the Truck Series to that other level. And my favorite moment, definitely with their tenure, was when I think it was last year when they had like a Formula One type sponsor. They would just almost tweeted out who needs a sponsor, and all of a sudden at least 9 trucks had Camping World on their truck. So I thought that was truly an awesome thing. And it feels like in the blink of an eye, we saw it from the Gander RV and Outdoor to Camping World to Craftsman Truck Series, just like that. But for what Marcus Lemonis has done for this series, it's truly remarkable. It sucks to see him go, and to see him committed as a businessman, being this involved with something that you could tell he loved doing what he did for this long. So I think my favorite memory, though, is definitely the trucks with like 9 of them. I believe something along those lines. Had every single truck had Camping World on it. That was very fascinating, but showed just the way he approached it too on Twitter. It was like, who needs a sponsor? It was kind of like that Oprah meme. You get a sponsor. You get a sponsor. That's what he did. And I think that he gained my respect that day, and it's very sad to see him go from the sport. But that's definitely my favorite memory of his tenure, is what he did that day.
Well, there was so much that Marcus did for everybody from the GMS Racings of the world to the Norm Betting Racings of the world. I think both of their trucks were part of that Las Vegas race, where I think it was 10 trucks in total, if I recall correctly. So nearly a third of the field sponsored by Camping World on that weekend. To have a fully sponsored field, I think we had every truck that would have been unsponsored otherwise ended up signing a deal with him on that day. So a lot of great memories from that race in particular. Seth Eves saying, I like the Triple Truck Challenge. And I think, Xfinity had the Dash for Cash, and they've had that program in the series even dating back to the Nationwide days. Great initiative that Marcus took there. And, like you all said, I'll just echo everything. We are certainly going to miss his commitment to the sport, but at the same time, we're thankful for everything that he did in his time, especially with the Truck Series. Good to see Demas back here in the chat room. If you are just joining us, I do want to catch everybody up real quick. We had an issue with the StreamYard going dead after Josh finished his Moto2 and Moto3 segment, and right before I went into the ARCA West. So if you want to catch up on that, you can feel free to restart the stream that you're on right now. But keep your fingers crossed. I think everything's back under control right now. We're back up and running. So that's just an explanation as to why there's 2 different streams here, but we'll edit it all and trim it all out and make it look good after the show here. But good to see you back in the chat room once again, Demas. Now to follow up on the championship for Front Row Motorsports, I know Matthew brought up this point a little bit as well. At the moment, Front Row is the only Ford Truck Series team confirmed for 2023. David Gilliland Racing will return to Toyota and rebrand as Tricon Garage to help fill the void left by Kyle Busch Motorsports switching to Chevrolet, as Casey mentioned in the chat. So we've talked about this partnership in the past, and I have to say, from what I've heard and understood the last couple of weeks, it sounds like Front Row has really already kind of become a more independent team. We've been comparing it to the Wood Brothers and Penske in the Cup Series, but I think Front Row certainly going to be next year a lot more independent. I know they bought a lot of stuff from David Gilliland's truck team, especially when Todd was there racing for them the last couple of years. But Matthew, I guess we'll start with you on this one. Do you think Ford would be willing to put all of their eggs into one basket with Front Row, or would they try to recruit another truck team before the beginning of next season?
I think it's what our parents and everyone did while we were younger with the Easter egg hunt, and you got to spread it out. You can't just all put it one place or the kid's going to get it all. I like everything you were saying, Ben. Like, you don't understand how excited I was when you brought up like Brad Keselowski racing and along those lines. But one thing I want to touch on is I think you got, with your Ford, you have to get Ryan Preece in a truck or in an Xfinity car if he doesn't replace Cole Custer. And if you don't want to put him with Front Row, you got to put him somewhere. You can't lose a talent like that. I think that's just a plain and simple thing for what he did for David Gilliland racing along those lines. And I would love, we're talking about drivers who, unfortunately, when people try to own teams in the sport, like when Kyle Busch had his Xfinity team, or Nationwide technically, didn't go very well. But then now he had an ARCA team, truck team, very, very successful. I think it's time to bring back Brad Keselowski racing now that he is an owner with Ross Fenway Keselowski. And like what he did, you were touching on like with Ross Chastain. You had guys like Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano ran a few races. Tyler Reddick, Daniel Hemrick, Austin Cindric, I believe even Chase Briscoe raced. And those are very talented drivers getting their runs through Brad Keselowski Racing in the Truck Series. And we saw a lot of guys with KBM. Pretty sure most of the guys who won this season had something to do with KBM in their careers. So I think it's time to bring them back. I think that's time for Ford to really bring them back. And then you don't really have many Ford development drivers coming through. I think that's the issue I touch on in the group me a lot is in terms of the Truck Series to Xfinity Series to Cup Series, everything is so out of whack, to be honest with you. Like Toyota, you can have the most trucks ever, to Xfinity very small, and then Cup not too big. Ford, it's like you got one truck, you have 5 Xfinity cars, and you have pretty much all of the Ford development or for the Ford Cup Series. And then with Chevrolet, you're everywhere. So I feel like it's kind of hard to compete against Chevy in terms of where they got their money, et cetera, stuff like that. But I think it's time for Ford to really say, we don't want to have just one truck team. Because if like a new manufacturer like Dodge comes into the sport, I wonder what would happen. You can't like have 2 powerhouses in Toyota and Chevrolet and then have Ford and Dodge have like one truck. Or now it's going to be Ford with one truck. So I think what we really have to see is hopefully someone like Ryan Preece, someone like Jake Drew is probably the only Ford development driver I can think of that has the championship, can come up through development and really do something along those lines, because obviously the Gray brothers are switching into Toyota. So I think it's time for Brad Keselowski to restart his team after, which will be 6 years because it ended in 2017. Put someone like Jake Drew, put someone like Ryan Preece in your truck, get people in that good equipment, and then hopefully kick off Ford back into the Truck Series. I mean, they just won the championship, so it's not like they have bad equipment by any stretch of the imagination. Just that's my long rant. I was very excited you brought up Brad Keselowski Racing, so that's how I'm going to end that point.
Yeah, that's basically my point right there, man. I mean, they need to be spread out again. And but I do think maybe it might be wise for Ford to just put all their eggs in one basket there in the Truck Series, but so you have all your resources in one spot. But yeah, I'm still kind of dissatisfied, especially with the Xfinity Series, of how little the presence of Ford is there as a competitor. It really doesn't look good for them as a manufacturer. And then the Cup Series being kind of mid as it is, it's amazing that we got a Ford champion this year. I think there was some weird stat about Ford champions in the Cup Series. I've already forgotten about it, but anyway, yeah, Ford might be a good idea to put all their eggs in the front row basket. But also we still need that parity, so it would be good to spread it around. I'm interested in what Kobe has to say about it.
The first multiple champions since Ned Jarrett in the 60s, I think, was the stat.
That's the one. Yeah.
Go ahead, Kobe.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up how Ford has lack of interest in Xfinity Series, Brandon, because a while back, Ryan Siegel currently has a Ford team, said that he was thinking about changing manufacturers, potentially switching back to Chevrolet. So that would be another blow to Ford there. It's interesting seeing what their business model is right now in NASCAR. You know, not having many teams in trucks in their Xfinity, and obviously, you know, had a good year in Cup. You know, winning the championship with Joey Logano yesterday. But I really think that Ford should really look into adding more teams. And I'm glad you guys brought up the point about Brad Keselowski. Brad says right now, you know, he wants to focus on improving the Cup program that he has right now, you know, getting him and Chris Buescher trending in the right direction. I think for the most part during this second half of the season, they've done that. I think Brad Keselowski and Chris Buescher are going to have a much better 2023, although at Phoenix, it seemed like they kind of took a step back. You know, Brad's car caught on fire there, and that seems like an issue that Ford needs to figure out over the offseason throughout this year. For some reason, it always seems like a Ford is just randomly catching on fire, and I'm sure they're going to look at that over the offseason, see what they can do to make sure that doesn't happen again. And we all know how Brad Keselowski is such a great evaluator of talent, as you guys been saying. Look at the Cup Series now. You could just go down the list and see the number of drivers who are Brad Keselowski racing alums, and you know, same thing for Kyle Busch. You can see which drivers who drove at KBM, and I think you would get like over half of the field pretty much. It just shows how good those guys are evaluating with talent. And then the future, once Keselowski gets the Cup program running well, it'll be interesting to see if we can see RFK Racing go down to Xfinity and trucks as well, because I know that's something that Brad wants to do on a long-term basis.
Well, and don't forget, Roush had a truck team at one time as well. I remember Mark Martin won the very first NASCAR race I ever watched in Talladega in 2006, and was doing a little bit of truck whacking, I guess, if you will, running several truck races that year. But if you think of names like Colin Braun and Eric Darnell racing, Travis Quapple as well. So there is some history there for both Roush and Keselowski, and we'll see. Maybe they put their resources together and return there one day. And on the note of Keselowski as well, if you want to bring up Dodge and how they exited the sport, I was thinking back to the 2012 season, and obviously they were still competitive. Brad won the championship that year, but Penske was really their only team in the Cup Series. They had Robbie Gordon Motorsports run, I think, 5 races or something like that. But obviously Robbie, as an owner driver on a limited budget, didn't have the resources that a Penske kind of team had. And once Penske switched to Ford, that was kind of the end for Dodge. They even released a 2013 Generation 6 model car that never saw the light of day because Dodge had no more teams left and ended up pulling out of the sport. We did see some zombie Dodges and zombie Rams, I guess, in the truck series, if you will, for several years after that with some underfunded teams that don't get the factory support. But in terms of having Dodge as a full manufacturer support group in the sport, it has been a full decade now since we've seen that. I suppose they would be the most logical candidate if we're looking to add a 4th manufacturer. But I think in the meantime, this needs to be a major concern for NASCAR as well. If Front Row Motorsports is the only 4-team in the truck series next year, what does that say about their truck program? And Xfinity as well, hearing that Ryan Sieg may not be in with Ford for the long run. Penske doesn't have their Xfinity program up and running anymore. That's another huge loss for Ford. But then you get to the Cup Series and you have Stewart Haas and Penske and Front Row and a couple of other entries scattered out through there. I think they kind of have it's almost seems like where Toyota drivers go, because Toyota seems to have the opposite problem. They only have 6 Cup Series entries. So their guys like Harrison Burton and Todd Gilliland are now racing for the Wood Brothers and Front Row Motorsports, respectively. They're now in the Ford camp when they started their development careers in the Toyota camp. So I think manufacturer identity is a conversation that we're probably going to have on this show quite a bit more often here. But I think we have some things to iron out first before we get into discussions of bringing Dodge and Ram back as the 4th entry or 4th manufacturer, or maybe a wild card. Does anybody else remember the Volkswagen rumors from back in the day on J-Ski? I think that's something that was kind of an up and down thing that was going on the turn of a decade there. It never really got any traction there, but who knows what the future holds. I think Dodge is certainly the most logical candidate to come back in, like I just said. We'll have one more comment here in the chat from or 2 actually. Here's Casey, our own Casey Campbell. As for more Ford teams, I was told they will be announcing their plans for trucks and for ARCA soon, so maybe stay tuned on that. Casey has a history of some accurate
stay tuned
here, so we'll see. Chrome Diesel says that puts Preece and Deegan on a question where they go since DGR moved to Toyota. That's true. I hear that Ford has some plans for Deegan. She seems to be optimistic. If you looked at her social media posts following Phoenix, she's optimistic about putting a deal together in the Xfinity Series, most likely. So we'll just have to wait and see. I think there are still a lot of pieces that are going to be falling into place here in the next couple of weeks and months before the 2023 season gets underway. Well, with that, let's move on to the Xfinity Series and talk a little bit about Ty Gibbs and what an amazing season that he capped off this weekend. Ty held off Junior Motorsports teammates, all 3 of Junior Motorsports teammates that were in the championship 4, specifically Noah Gragson and Justin Allgaier, who finished 2nd and 3rd, respectively, in the race. Of course, obviously, it was an emotional week for the Gibbs family, first dealing with the fallout from Martinsville, then celebrating Ty's championship hours before Coy's unfortunate and sudden death overnight. Brandon, we'll bring you back in and start with you on this one. What's your reaction to Ty Gibbs closing the deal and winning the championship after the week that he had?
Oh, it was amazing, and I'm really happy for Ty Gibbs and the whole Gibbs organization after right just before tragedy struck, and certainly our hearts and prayers are with the Gibbs family with the passing of Mr. Coy Gibbs, and just the only solace is that he knew the Lord, and that's all that really matters. And just nice to see Ty Gibbs close the championship after a lot of controversy. And no matter what you might think of him, he's 20 years old, and I know we've been critical of him on this show as he has deserved that criticism. But I'm looking forward to seeing him grow not only as a race car driver, but as a person. And I know we've all been there at some point in one way or the other, and hoping that he, well, first of all, that he has time to grieve over the off season, and certainly can't even imagine what that is like. But also optimistic about his opportunities in the Cup Series next year. It's basically a unconfirmed shoe-in of where he's going, and we hope the best for him, and that he will take the time to learn in the Cup Series, and that he'll find success.
Well said, Brandon. And I'm glad you brought up the point about Ty Gibbs only being 20 years old. You know, we're young, and when we were younger, we've all made, you know, some unfortunate errors, as you mentioned. We throughout the season, you know, we've been talking about all the controversy that Ty Gibbs has done on the track. You know, there's a time and a place for that, and considering the horrific tragedy of losing his father, now is not the time to, you know, to really go too deep into that. And being 20 years old, considering all the things that went wrong on track for him this year, I think that would be a great opportunity for him to learn from all of those mistakes. But overall, you can't deny the talent that this young kid has. He's, like I've been saying on these programs all year long, I think Ty Gibbs is a generational talent. Like he's like that LeBron James coming out of high school. I think Ty Gibbs is that good. I think he could win multiple NASCAR Cup Series championships and win a whole lot of races at the top level. And I think he'll be going into obviously a really good situation. You know, the worst kept secret in the garage right now, driving the number 18 for Joe Gibbs Racing, replacing Kyle Busch. And I think if Ty Gibbs, you know, learns from some of the things that went wrong throughout on the track this year and in the past and other years, I think he'll develop into a really solid NASCAR Cup Series driver, and based on his talent alone, well-deserved champion in the NASCAR Xfinity Series.
Yeah, and I can definitely agree with that. I remember one of my first ever long rants on the show was kind of talking about how if you have people call Ty Gibbs like a silver spoon driver, but I feel like if you're at Joe Gibbs Race, you could throw that spoon and run it over, because I don't think that makes sense. I think Ty Gibbs is one of the best talents we have seen in NASCAR coming through the ranks in a very, very, very long time. I think he just doesn't get the credit he deserves solely because of his grandfather. But Ty Gibbs just knows how to do it. 11 wins and I believe like 51 starts. The fourth youngest Xfinity Series champion in history. The kid knows what he's doing. He knows how to wheel a race car, and he's a winner. And I think he is going to win multiple Xfinity Series championships as well. I think he wins more Cup Series championships as well. I think he wins more Cup Series championships than most of the field that are currently on the grid right now. I just think Ty Gibbs has that talent. And to see what he did closing the deal, winning the championship, he didn't let the pressure get to him. I mean, the whole week was like, somebody needs to take Ty Gibbs out. Junior Motorsports is going to dominate him. And then he just really came in and was like, I'm going to do it. It put matters into his own hands and won the championship in a dominating fashion for Ty Gibbs. So I definitely think he deserves it. I think this season for the Xfinity Series, we saw Noah Gragson, AJ Allmendinger, Ty Gibbs, and even Justin Allgaier were the four that really dominated the season. But Ty Gibbs did it when it counted, just like his fellow Toyota counterpart in Christopher Bell in the Cup Series. When he needed the win, he did need the win in the round of 12, round of 8. I just think Ty Gibbs is definitely still on his way up, and he's only 20. He's younger than all of us here. So it's just a crazy thing. We're going to be, like our parents talk about seeing drivers like Jimmy Johnson, Greg Biffle along those lines. That's going to be, Ty Gibbs is our Jimmy Johnson, or Ty Gibbs is our Greg Biffle in terms of looking back at the history of the sport. Oh, I mean, obviously he's 20 years old, too early to say, but that's just my view on the whole situation with him.
He's the Jeff Gordon of Toyota right now.
Yeah.
Young Jeff Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the talent is certainly not in question at all. Regardless of what you think of him, and that leads me into something I just want to address here before we catch up on the chat. I wanted to go into a little bit deeper detail yesterday. I know we had a long show ahead of us, but I hope that people can look at this situation and what's going on with that family right now, and just have a heart and refrain from making these awful, horrible comments, as keyboard warriors who think they're so tough when they don't even have to show their face or their real name here and can just say all sorts of terrible crap to these accounts and to these people and these human beings that are involved here. I think it's a colossal mistake anytime you log on Twitter and you read the replies, or you log on to Facebook and you look at the comments and you see all these personal attacks and insults. And you saw it after Martinsville, and we were critical, like you said, Brandon, of the move that Ty Gibbs pulled. Kobe, I know you were feeling the same way when you were on the show last week. And, we can criticize somebody's actions on track without going there. And I think a lot of people get caught up in the negativity that social media creates, and it all bubbles up and it all comes out there. To see some of these comments and to see people speculating on the cause of Coy's death and other awful comments coming from the Facebook comments and Twitter replies, I always go back and forth on which one is worse. It's just horrible. And I don't know that people who haven't been there can really grasp and understand. I'm very fortunate. Both of my parents are still here. 3 of my 4 grandparents are still here. You lose a parent at 20 years old. I can imagine. I can't even imagine how devastating that must be. You lose your second son at 49 years old, just a few years after you lost your first son at 49 years old. I mean, to have to bury both of your children before they reach 50 years old is just absolutely heartbreaking. My heart breaks for Joe Gibbs right now and what that family has had to go through the last few years. And at least with JD, it was, I don't want to minimize the tragedy that his death was either, but he was slowly becoming more sick, and you had time to prepare and know that his time was coming to an end. But whereas this was so sudden, and I don't know which one's worse. When you have that time to say goodbye and prepare yourself for that moment, but the suffering is prolonged. Whereas here, with Coy's passing being so sudden and so unexpected, it's an awful tragedy. No matter how you slice it, anytime you lose somebody at that age, and I know I said it on yesterday's show. I know I'm just repeating stuff that has been said already, but my heart breaks for that family, and I continue to, give them all my best. I don't know how much I can offer other than just, a few words here, but to see some of these comments, I hope people take a step back and recognize, in the grand scheme of things, we felt this way watching the race yesterday. Does this really matter? When something like this happens, and it really puts things into perspective. And I hope that people can recognize that and take a step back and maybe try to, better themselves and think, when something like what happens at Martinsville, whenever it happens again, because it will happen again, that's just the nature of this sport, refrain from the personal insults, criticize the move, criticize the driving standards, criticize, the culture of the sport that has maybe allowed that. Absolutely. There's a place for that, but there's no place for the hate and the, insanely insensitive comments that we've been seeing. And I just want to make that clear that we don't condone any of those. And we're at the same time wishing all the best for the Gibbs family as they continue to work through this unspeakable tragedy here. I see Seth Eves in the chat room saying the same thing. Congratulations to Ty. Condolences to the Gibbs family. A good Xfinity Series season overall. Absolutely. And this leads us into the next comment from Chrome Diesel. Doesn't sit well for me seeing the average finish of the Xfinity Championship 4, with Ty having 9.2, Gregson 8.1, Allgaier 10.5, Barry 10.8. I'll take your word for that. I don't have the averages in front of me. But this is a good follow-up, actually. AJ Allmendinger, 6.6, ending up 5th in the final points. I'll preview my one shining moment early here. AJ Allmendinger didn't have a single DNF all year, only had 5 races outside the top 10 all season, but 2 of those 5 came in the round of 8, and that ultimately kept him out of a championship 4. So I guess we'll do a follow-up here. I guess, Brandon, we can go to you first. We asked Kobe on the wrap-up show, or on the Encore show last week, do you have a problem with Allmendinger missing the championship 4? What's your reaction to seeing those numbers and knowing that Allmendinger's season was capped out at a 5th place points finish?
Yeah, Chrome Diesel, I got to stick with you there. It doesn't sit very well when you see the numbers sitting there. 5th, and he finished 5th in final points. I mean, but yet he had a stellar season, better than arguably better than 3 of the other 4 drivers in the championship 4. So this is one of those flaws that I think NASCAR doesn't like to talk about in their playoff format. Does it always work this way? No, but here's a case this year where it did, and it doesn't look cool. But AJ Allmendinger had every right as far as finishes to be there points wise. Just you have to win, and that's just how this game works now. So you have to win. You have to be up there. You have to have no mechanical failures. You have to have a great pit stop every time when it counts, and that's just the way the cookie crumbles now.
Matthew, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think AJ Allmendinger's seasons kind of remind me of like when Elliott Sadler came back to the Xfinity Series. How
That's exactly right.
Sadler had like so many dominant years where it's like the lowest average finish. I think one of the records that AJ Allmendinger was very close to breaking or broke, I can't really confirm or deny that about the average finish. I think it was like Elliott Sadler's. But Elliott Sadler never won a championship. But if it was a season-long thing, he'd be a 3-time NASCAR Xfinity Series champion. But Allmendinger is one of those guys you look at and it's like, he should be a champion. He should have won best driver, probably the best driver in the series, making his way up, dominating both levels. When he ran in Cup, he had like tied the longest top 10 finish streak with 6 or 7 this season, racing a part-time schedule in the Cup Series. So, I mean, Allmendinger's got talent, and it doesn't sit well with me really at all to see him finish 5th. It reminds me a lot of Allgaier, too, last year. Just Allgaier's stretch of, I don't know how many races was just all in the top 10s, and he did finish, I believe, 5th in the playoffs, not making that Final Four. It's just a weird thing that I've always liked the idea of coming down to the last race, that Game 7 moment, especially from what we saw in the Xfinity and Truck Series. I wouldn't trade that for the world. The Cup Series, I feel like, was the most boring way to end one of the best seasons ever. But in terms of the Xfinity and Trucks, it was great. But for AJ having that low of a finish and only finishing in 5th in points, it's kind of stupid, in my opinion, because of just what he's done since he's come back into the Xfinity Series, and to be not even rewarded for that, just finishing 5th. I think it's kind of dumb, I guess, in my opinion. Obviously, these are all my opinions. Don't take it too seriously.
It's okay. I say a lot of things are dumb around here. You can say it here.
I think a lot of people share those opinions as well. Kobe, I know on last week's show we were talking about this very subject, and you were talking about how difficult of a break it was for Allmendinger to miss out on a championship 4. Just seeing those average finish numbers just further drive that point home for you.
Oh yeah, definitely. Ben, AJ Allmendinger was the most consistent driver in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, and like I said last week, hate the game because without this playoff format, you know, AJ Allmendinger would be singing a different tune right now, and it certainly has to be extremely frustrating that you were statistically the best NASCAR Xfinity Series driver this year, and you only have a 5th place finish in the points to show for it. Definitely a frustrating end to his time in the Xfinity Series with Colleague Racing, but looking at his performance in the Cup Series this year on a part-time schedule, if I'm Allmendinger, Colleague Racing, I have to be very excited for 2023 because it seems like this next-gen car really suits his drivers. I know AJ Allmendinger coming from open wheel racing, familiar with this, I guess, newer technology to NASCAR. Also in sports car racing as well. We know AJ's had a lot of success in that discipline of racing as well. I think this new car and considering the equipment that Colleague has, I think that they certainly have some work to do, to try to improve their equipment in the Cup Series. But I think the car that Allmendinger's in right now is certainly a lot better than what the JTG Daugherty car that he was in. So I think he should be very excited for next year, especially since we got road courses, street courses on the schedule next year. He could easily win several of those, and don't count him out on short tracks. I was actually surprised to see how well he ran at Homestead. He was up there battling for the win in the final laps, which is something I did not expect at all. I know, Ben, on previous shows we were talking about AJ Allmendinger potentially making a deep playoff run in 2023, making it to the round of 8, and I actually think that's a legitimate possibility that we could see AJ Allmendinger go that far.
Yeah, round of 8, no doubt. And if he steals a win at Homestead in the round of 8, where does that leave him? He'll be fighting for a Cup Series championship at Phoenix. I mean, it's unthinkable when you think of how the JTG Daugherty tenure ended. Where he is now is just nothing short of incredible. And, we'll certainly be keeping an eye on that. But at the same time, very frustrating to see him 5th in points. And, when I vent my frustrations with the playoff system, it's not only the champion. I want to give all credit in the world to Ty Gibbs. I think, you look at the season that he's had and you could say, yeah, he ran well enough to be a champion in the Xfinity Series. It's not, as good of an average finish as what AJ Allmendinger had, or right up there with Noah Gragson as well. But to see AJ get locked out of a championship 4 and know that 5th is as high as he can go, to see Martin Truex Jr. in the Cup Series get locked out of the playoffs entirely because of all the parity that we saw, and to know that he was a top 5 car in the point standings, but they're only going to finish 17th in the Drivers' Championship. And then, the owner's side of things, Ryan Blaney not winning a race, getting locked out of the Owner's Championship. I mean, there's prize money that is associated with the Owner's Championship. They were making such a big deal about that with Kyle Larson being in the Championship 4 on that side of things. So, it's not even just what happens with the championships at the top of the leaderboard. It's the fact that there are drivers that should be higher in points than they are, but are not. And on the flip side as well, no disrespect to, we've been talking about Front Row Motorsports here on this Encore episode here. Chris Buescher stole a win, more power to him in 2016 at Pocono with the fog. But was that a 16th place car in the championship? When you look at how that car ran in 2016, I don't think it was. Now it locks him into the chase or the playoffs, and more power to him. That's the system that we have now. But how do you think the guys that just missed out on the playoffs, that ran statistically much better seasons than what Front Row ran that year, feel about seeing their name underneath the 16th place finisher in points? So it's not just a championship issue in my mind. And I think what happened to AJ this year, missing out on a championship 4 when he had a remarkable stretch of top 10s, no DNFs, and the best average finish by far in the series. To not be the champion is one thing, to not even be in the top 4 is another. And I think it's an incredibly valid source of frustration for his fans and for the Kaulig team, and something that maybe NASCAR needs to look at. Kobe, I know we were talking last week about maybe more bonus points for the regular season champion, or a buy into the round of 4, or maybe even the round of 8. I think there's still some tweaking that needs to be done with this playoff format if we're going to double down on it and insist on not going back to a regular season championship or not a 10-race chase like we had in the past. I think the earliest we could see a change there is probably when the new TV deals come in 2025, and who knows what the sport will look like then. But we'll just have to wait and see there. Now, let's keep talking about junior motorsports a little bit. As I mentioned, Noah Gragson and Justin Allgaier came up short. And for Allgaier in particular, it's the 5th time in 7 years that the Xfinity Series has had this format where Allgaier made the championship 4, but he did come up, he did come up just short again. Allgaier still had a solid season, finishing 3rd in the standings, so the championship is still what eludes him. So, Matthew, we'll go to you first. How frustrating must this be for Allgaier, having come so close so many times now?
I think you could ask the same question about how Denny Hamlin's got to feel in the Cup Series. Just, you got to be angry. I mean, let's take a look at Allgaier's finishes since he's been with Junior Motorsports, and even with, Turner Scott Motorsports. His last seasons, we're going to go backwards here. So 3rd, 5th, 2nd, 4th, 7th, 3rd, 5th, 6th, 3rd, 4th, and 6th in terms of his Xfinity career. He's almost there. He's almost there, but he just can't get it done. And it's just a very unfortunate circumstance for him. But I feel like in a couple of years, he has not been that number 1 driver there. But he definitely, in terms of the history with Junior Motorsports, he's been the most consistent when you look at it. I mean, you've had Gragson, you've had Sadler, you've had, Reddick for the year, you had would have been Chase Elliott too. There's so many guys to name off. Allgaier's just so close, and he's that guy who's just built for the Xfinity Series. But at the same time, I really hope he can get it done. I mean, he's getting up there age-wise, but I mean, in terms of what he's done, I believe he is like almost at 400 career starts in the Xfinity Series with I think 399, something along those lines, with 19 wins. Very, very impressive career. One of the best we have seen, but just unfortunately, when it comes to getting to the championship race and winning the championship race, I feel like it's always stolen from him, which is a very unfortunate circumstance. So he's got to come in next year. I really think when you look at the talent that Junior Motorsports has coming in for next season with Sam Mayer, who I think had a great rookie season, I think he can get his first career win next season. You have Josh Berry, who just came out of nowhere doing great things, Brandon Jones. I think this is time for Justin Allgaier to step up and be that number one driver at Junior Motorsports and get it done for next season.
Yeah, it certainly has to be very frustrating for Justin Allgaier coming so close so many times. And Matthew, you brought up coming down to the championship race. Always seems like, it just doesn't fall. It doesn't fall into place for Justin Allgaier. And it's like a lottery coming down to this final race. It's not as we see AJ Allmendinger, not even getting into the championship for. It's not the best driver all season long. It's the best driver in the championship for on that certain day. So if Justin Allgaier is the best driver on that certain day, everything falls in place. He'll be the champion. And if it's not his day, like it wasn't on Saturday, he won't be the champion. But certainly when Allgaier puts together these great seasons and always come up short, it certainly has to be frustrating. And also another good point you brought up, Matthew. He's getting up there in age. In his mid-30s right now, going to be approaching his 40s before you know it. And we don't know how much longer Justin Allgaier is gonna be racing, at least on a full-time basis. But certainly heading into 2023, as he continues to get older, there's probably going to be the sense of urgency to try to get a championship sooner rather than later. And it's going to be interesting to see how Junior Motorsports is going to perform in 2023, because it seemed like this year they perfected it on the personnel standpoint. But as we know, there's a lot of turnover in organizations from year to year, and there's going to be some changes in this organization in 2023.
Well, on the note of Junior Motorsports as well, I think we have another comment from Casey in the chat. I think you touched on this a little bit, Matthew. How do you think Sam Mayer did in his first rookie season? I think all of Junior Motorsports, honestly, had a very, very strong year. Of course, Mayer was the only one that wasn't in the championship four, and he could have been with how Junior Motorsports was running all season if he had just won one of the races at the right time, or run a little bit differently on points. I think all of their equipment was right there. We were talking, could there even be a possibility that they could lock out the championship for they're running so well? So I think a very solid rookie season for him. We'll see if he can build on that. Very solid season for Josh Berry as well. And Brandon, this will lead me into a question that I have for you. I know you've been on the Josh Berry train for several weeks now, though he was a pretty distant fourth in the championship battle on Saturday. How would you assess how his season went, and what do you expect from him going forward into 2023?
Yeah, I saw that in the script earlier, and I was thinking, well, a couple episodes back, I was saying maybe we should get me off the old Josh Berry train. I don't want to become that guy that's just fanboying over one driver, but I was just seeing the potential of a championship run for him this season, and I harped about it a couple of times, and I guess it became who I was on this show. But yeah, when he got to Phoenix, it didn't turn out so well. He fell back there, but I'm still very optimistic for Junior Motorsports as a whole for next year. And it was good news to see Josh Berry get that re-sign for next year, and he's got a lot of good partners backing him there. And of course, Dale Earnhardt Jr. thinks a lot of him, clearly being his boss and extending his contract another year. It's been an overall great season, I think, for Josh Berry, and next year I expect about the same level of performance. And hopefully some things will change around for him when they get to the final 12 or 8.
Well, one thing I want to circle back to in regards to Ty Gibbs, and also, again, the fourth Junior Motorsports driver. But first, in terms of the standings this year, Noah Gragson, I think somebody mentioned it here. Forgive me, I forget who it was. The worst kept secret in the garage. It might have been you, Brandon. The 18 car for next year, Kyle Busch's replacement.
That was Kobe.
Yeah. That was Kobe?
Yeah.
There you go. Worst kept secret, I think Ty Gibbs will be in the number 18. I think Rick Allen even mentioned Ty Gibbs is moving up to Cup next year. And of course, we know he's done several Cup races with 2311 Racing. Noah Gragson doing several with Colleague this year, ironically enough. And, of course, a couple of starts with Beard Oil Motorsports. So they both have some Cup experience already. But, Brandon, we'll go to you, and then Kobe and Matthew here. Just very simple question here. Two options. Who do you think will have the better first full-time Cup season in 2023, Ty Gibbs or Noah Gragson?
It's tough to say because we're not in 2023 yet, are we? But Noah Gragson going to a really revived Petty GMS, and now you get Jimmy Johnson going there. Are you kidding me? This is going to be very interesting. And then you've got Ty Gibbs, the first Ben, you and I talked about it over the week on the chat, the first rookie stripe on the 18 car since JJ Yaley. So it's been a while since the NASCAR paddock has had to deal with a rookie in the 18 car. It's usually home to Kyle Busch, but before that, before Yaley, it was home to Bobby Labonte. So it's usually a veteran seat. So it's going to be it's a weird mixture on both sides. And I think Gibbs, I think I also tweeted a couple of days ago, Gibbs and Gregson is must-see TV for next season, because Gregson has made his opinions very clear. I just don't like the kid, and even afterwards, I think he referred to him as a POS. So I think both sides need to calm down a little bit, but it's great for the viewer, though. I hope you guys are going to be excited for next year, and Ty Gibbs and Noah Gragson. See how I'm a politician here, avoiding the question. I think Petty GMS might have a better year. I think Ty Gibbs is still going to have a tough time acclimating to the Cup Series car, but I could be proven completely wrong. We'll have to see.
Well, let me tell you, Brandon, I get ads for 4 different political states here, with where I'm located in Delaware and Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland being so close by. So I cannot wait for tomorrow to be over so that I don't have to keep seeing those political ads on my television, and they can go clean up all the yard signs. It's just,
I'm tired of Google and all the social media networks telling me it's election day. Like, it's not your job to tell me. I know.
I feel that. Kobe, how about you? Gibbs or Gregson? Who are you taking in 23?
Before I answer that question, Ben, I wanted to circle back to the question in the chat room, I believe, from Casey about Sam Mayer. And I think Dale Earnhardt Jr. said in recent weeks, that for this year, he didn't really have any specific expectations for Sam Mayer, because he's only 19 years old, not even 20 yet, still a teenager. So Sam Mayer, he had a lot of success in the ARCA Menards Series, winning races there, coming to Xfinity Series last year. It didn't really go so well for him. He was either running well or crashing. And this year, I think we've seen a lot less of that. He's having some nice, strong, consistent runs, and by not putting any pressure on him to perform his rookie season, I think that worked out really well for him. And I think in 2023, it could be I think we could see a really big year for Sam Mayer, like have a breakout season. I also think the same thing could happen with Sheldon Creed. I think, when you look at Gregson, Gibbs, and Allmendinger, who are going to be moving on to the Cup Series next year, I think Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, Austin Hill, those are going to be some guys that you're going to have to look at next year to be, I guess, the new big 3 of the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And answer your question, do I think Gibbs or Gregson will have the better first full-time season? Actually going to go the opposite of Brandon. I think Ty Gibbs is going to have the best season. I know so far in the Cup Series in that 2311 racing equipment, he's had some decent runs, some not so decent runs, but hey, he's a young kid himself, just like Sam Mayer, out there getting experience. And I think it's going to help shorten his learning curve when he gets into what we expect to be the 18 car next year. Having some experience in the next gen car with 2311 racing, and we all knew Joe Gibbs Racing Equipment is one of the best equipment in the NASCAR Cup Series, so he's already going to have an advantage over Noah Gragson in that aspect. So I think, equipment wise and the personnel that he's going to be surrounded with, I think Joe Gibbs Racing will give Ty Gibbs the best chance to succeed. But keep an eye on Petty GMS. On Grid tonight, we're going to talk about Jimmy Johnson joining the ownership group over there, and we know Jimmy's going to bring a lot of experience, knowledge, new knowledge to that organization, so they can, I guess, do things from a different perspective from another 7-time champion. It's crazy between him and Richard Petty, 14 Cup Series championships at that organization. I think Eric Jones and Noah Gragson have to be very excited for next season. I don't know if they're gonna, reach the same performance levels as Joe Gibbs Racing within the next season or two, but I think you'll certainly see them improve compared to where they were this year. I know a lot of us were really shocked when Eric Jones won the Southern 500, but Arlington is an Eric Jones style track, and Noah Gragson, running some extra Cup races here, I think it's going to help him as well. But right now, I have to take Ty Gibbs over Noah Gragson having the better first full-time season of Cup racing. But I think Gragson and Jones, they're certainly going to be on the rise with Jimmy Johnson joining the ownership group.
Yeah, and for me, I think that's got to be the toughest question I think I've ever been asked on one of these shows. Also, I want to touch on Casey's comment. I think Sammy Smith's also going to be a force to be reckoned with Sam Mayer next season. I think I've always mentioned, I feel like Sam Mayer is kind of like what we all thought Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs is everything we thought Sam Mayer was going to be this season, but Ty Gibbs really shot out. I think Sam Mayer has that potential. But to answer the actual question, this has got to be one of the toughest things ever, and because if you look at their average finish in roughly the same amount of races. Gragson had a 23.1 average finish to Ty Gibbs, who had a 22.9 average finish. But then when it comes to Joe Gibbs' equipment's always been the best of the best. But now seeing Noah Gragson going to Petty GMS with possible Jimmy Johnson knowledge coming into that team, it's going to be a really tough one. I also want to point out, it's a little self-promotion here. I've never done it, but I just became a NASCAR writer for Last Word on Sports, and I have a story coming out over the next couple of days about owner points. And one of the points I make in owner points is the Hendrick Motorsports number 48. During the last 10 races of the season for the owners' playoffs, I guess you could say, Gragson split seat time with Bowman, and Gragson actually had a better average finish than Alex Bowman in the 5 races they competed. So if Jimmy Johnson brings any of that Hendrick knowledge to Petty GMS with Noah Gragson being in that seat, because I think Noah Gragson's a better driver than Ty Dillon anyway, no offense to Ty Dillon, but I think that could be the deciding factor here is what Jimmy Johnson and that partnership brings. But I think it's going to be split. I think in the 36 races we're going to see out of these two drivers, it's going to be 18-18. I don't know if you could put one in front of the other. I guess it just all depends on how they do, because Ty Gibbs, thrown into the Cup Series very early due to an injury, didn't perform as well as I think we wanted him to be, like a 23rd average finish coming in. Then with Noah Gragson getting all the seat time with Colleague Racing with a 21-22 average finish too along the lines, and then going to Hendrick Motorsports as well. I think I want to say, since Kobe said Gibbs, right? And then Brandon said Greg. I'm just gonna say in the middle, I'm gonna have Ben decide. So we got 1-1-1.
Oh yeah, come on.
Abstain courteously, I guess. That's a 1776 reference. So
I say they're gonna tie every race.
Yeah. I don't know. It's very tough. I guess I would lean Gibbs because of the equipment. I'm along the lines of Copley there. But then again, Petty GMS, I think, is definitely on the rise, and to have Jimmy Johnson coming over there, I think that's going to revitalize a lot of that energy over there, and we'll see what Gragson can do. And Matthew was a good point as well, getting the sub for Alex Bowman there. Gragson has experience, I guess, with 3 Cup teams now. Kind of forgot about the Hendrick. I mean, it's all just been a whirlwind here at the end of the season, but they both have definitely gotten more Cup experience than I think they were expecting to have going into their rookie season. So we'll see if that is beneficial to them at all heading into 2023. A couple final comments before we go into one shining moment here from Chrome Diesel to circle back to Allmendinger. I guess we'll bring this up here. He says AJ's 2022 stat could have been comparable to Jeff Green's 2000 season, but NASCAR designed a format that is impossible to compare past champions before the inception of the knockout format. And then goes on to say we can make the case for Allgaier to have a championship run next season. Might be an easy route to win the title since Gibbs, Gragson, and AJ are all moving to Cup. A very good point. Who's going to be the new Big Three to replace the Big Three that we have this season in the Xfinity Series now that they're all moving up to the Cup Series? We'll have to wait and see there. Well, thank you guys for sticking with us through all the technical issues in the first part of the show. Glad we got those sorted out. We're already coming up on an hour already, in addition to the Moto2 and Moto3 recap from Josh. So thank you all for sticking with us. Matthew, I'll go to you first since you're our guest here. It's your first time on the Encore show. What's your one shining moment from Phoenix, from Xfinity Trucks, or ARCA West?
So yesterday on the pre-race show, I mentioned Zane Smith, and I think that would be mine. But I want to touch on, I think my overall thing is going to be Chevrolet and Colleague Racing, and I'm going to explain because of how Chevrolet did not win a manufacturer championship in any of the series that we saw, both ARCA East, ARCA West, Trucks, Cup, Xfinity. But what Colleague Racing did, Matt Colleague and Chris Rice, when the Ty Gibbs situation broke, Allmendinger was over there, Daniel Hemrick was over there, Chevrolet was over there to really assess that situation and offer their help when needed. Noah Gragson, who also could be a Colleague driver technically in terms of the Cup Series, they were all there for when Toyota 2311 and the Gibbs family needed it. So I wanted to shout out Colleague Racing with Chris Rice and Matt Colleague for what they did to allow Hemrick to run in the Cup Series race. I know I kind of reversed it from what we did. So I guess my shining moment from yesterday should have been today's, and then today's should have been yesterday's. But I just wanted to point that out. So Colleague Racing overall in Chevrolet was my one shining moment from this past weekend.
And my one shining moment is Ty Gibbs winning that NASCAR Xfinity Series championship. You know, considering the shocking and stunning tragedy of losing his father, Coy Gibbs, and it was just, you know, jaw dropping. You know, looking at the championship photo yesterday. You know, just on Saturday night. You know, Ty standing there with his mother and father. Coy, it was just unbelievable. Like one moment you're taking the checker flag, you're the Xfinity champion. Next moment you're taking pictures with mom and dad, and then the very next moment your father is gone. So as we've been saying, you know, if there's any good that can come out of this situation, it was the fact that after all the hard work that Coy put in to get his boy this opportunity to go compete against NASCAR best, I'm really glad he got to experience this moment with his son, seeing his son become a NASCAR Cup Series champion. And moving forward, I'm sure Ty Gibbs is going to, you know, go out there and make his father proud for many years to come.
I have to be with you right there. It's a tragedy of tragedies this year to lose Coy Gibbs, and just the night before being there with his son, to see him do that, get that picture, it just says 1,000 words, and just praying for the Gibbs family, and just can't imagine that loss, but just really proud of the Ty Gibbs Xfinity Series championship, and wish them the best in the future, and just a lesson to us all that life is a vapor, and it's fleeting fast.
Completely agree with that, Brandon. I guess since I talk about the ARCA West Series, most of all of us here on Twitter and on this show, and for Rockbeard over at LastCar.info, I guess I'll give a shout out to Jake Drew and Sunrise Ford Racing and Bob Brincati to go out as champions. We'll see what Jake's plans are for next year, but especially after the heartbreak of how he lost the 2021 championship to Jesse Love, to come out and make a statement with the season that he had. I think it would have been not too difficult for him to just kind of, let that get to him and eat away at his performance this season, but he did just the opposite. He stepped it up. He is absolutely the definitive champion of the ARCA West Series this year. All congratulations to him and that Sunrise Ford team. And then, of course, like you all mentioned, like we've all been mentioning throughout the show, for Ty Gibbs in the season that he had, we're thinking of him and his family as they continue to deal with the loss of Coy. And certainly want to send all my best to the entire Joe Gibbs Racing organization and the Gibbs family in particular. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up the show. So be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already. Follow Grid Network on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We're also streaming on Twitch and LinkedIn as well now. So be sure to follow us wherever you can find us. If you really liked what you saw tonight, you can take 5 minutes after the show to invest in our Patreon. Consider joining Colin, Deshelle, Mark, and Robin in helping keep us on the air throughout the rest of 2022 as we look forward to 2023. Your support means the world to us. It's what allows us to continue to expand our coverage, what allowed me to go cover the ARCA Menards Series West for a couple of weekends this summer. We'll see if we can do that again next season, but your support will help us get there. If you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can buy me a coffee as well. That's our one-time donation option. A link to that is in the description box below as well. Thanks as always to Edward, Amber, and Zachary for helping us in that regard. Finally, visit our sponsor, Public.com, the stock market social media home. The referral code GRIDnet in the link below and on screen gives you $5 to invest. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends, make new friends, and use tools to learn how to invest in the stock market. Now, on Wednesday, Kobe will bring you Grid Tonight with Josh Burch. Joe Samniego will host the Women in Motorsports program on Friday with Daniel Zeri. And as always, you can stay tuned for more Grid Live coverage this weekend. The season's wrapping up, but we do have a couple of Formula One races left and a couple other series in action as we close out 2022. Matthew, in particular, I want to thank you for joining us your first time on the Encore show. Do you have any final thoughts before we sign off for this evening?
I just wish I had my Mondays more available this past couple of weeks. I had such a blast with all three of you guys, really. It was such an honor, especially ending NASCAR season. My one expertise, I'm not as great in terms of knowledge when it comes to all the other series, but to end it, I guess talking about NASCAR with you guys right here tonight was definitely a blast. And hopefully everyone realizes how much fun we have and how much we love to do what we're doing here, especially whatever night of the week it is. Grid Network is probably going to be live sometime, so make sure you guys are tuned in.
Oh, yeah.
We're glad to have you on the team, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. Brandon, Kobe, do you have anything to add before we sign off here?
Just thankful. It's thankful season, guys, and a couple more Formula One races left on the calendar, and hope you have a great off season overall.
Yeah, and I actually just wanted to touch on a news story from the NASCAR Truck Series that was announced over the weekend. With Kyle Busch Motorsports officially moving to Chevrolet. I know Ben, you're probably going to touch on this over the off season and break it down more into detail. But the drivers who are leaving Kyle Busch Motorsports and the drivers who are coming in, and also the manufacturer switch as well from Toyota to Chevrolet. I'm wondering if next year could be a down year for Kyle Busch Motorsports, like we saw the switch for Palmer Friesen racing with Stuart Friesen. He was running very well in the Chevy Silverado, then switched to the Toyota, and he had a down year, and then he eventually got back up to that performance. Really tough for KB, losing on John Hunter Nemechek, a Chandler Smith, a Corey Haim, and now he's going to have full time in the number 4 the 4 Chevrolet Silverado. Going to have Chase Purdy, who's bounced around so far in his young NASCAR career, and then Jack Wood is going to be a part of the All-Star truck in the number 51. No, Jack Wood, didn't really have the best season. He finished 24th in the standings this year, and when you're in a GMS truck and you're finishing that low in the standings, and Grant Enfinger, in the playoffs, even though you're really young, that's certainly not a good look. So driving for Kyle Busch next year is going to be an important year for Jack Wood's development. I'll be interested to see who else is going to be in that all-star truck. I know they say potentially Jimmy Johnson was interested in running a race. Even Austin Dillon said he'd like to, get a race or two in.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Kobe. Make sure you stay tuned for next week's show. We're going to have Casey back with us. Casey's really great at breaking down all the silly season news, as you all know, so we'll certainly touch on that as well as some other news that's broken in the Xfinity Series and maybe even ARCA as well. For Josh Burch, Matthew Bro, Brandon Crossland, and Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much for watching, for sticking with us through the technical difficulties. We'll see you next week. Have a good week, everybody.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest. Start investing and networking on public.com.